the goal of building any software should be to provide value to the users. Whether that's through making a great app and building a lot of great features, or through making the app almost instantaneous and making it resolve in 2 milliseconds. And I promise you, if you start thinking about the non-functional requirements before you build a feature, it will likely take you to the next level of your software engineering career faster. Now let me explain why. Now let's take a step back and think what requirements actually are. Whenever we start building a new project, we start with choosing the best tech stack, right? Well, no. We start from the requirements. We need to understand what the user wants, what we're trying to build, how we're going to provide value to the users, and then we go from there. And this will help guide our decision making when it comes to choosing the best tech stack for the solution we're trying to provide, where to host it, is serverless a good idea, how we're going to deliver it to the app, and other similar decisions like that. And requirements can be divided into types: functional requirements and non-functional requirements. And no distinction is perfect, but one way to think about it is functional requirements are what the software must do versus the non-functional requirements, which is what the software must be. Non-functional requirements are intended to describe system qualities or various system attributes that are not directly related to their functionality. And they may sound secondary, but they're very important, oftentimes more important than the actual functionality. For example, if you're building a Twitter clone, the functional requirements would be: we need the user to be able to create an account, be able to tweet, see other people's tweets, and interact with them. Now, obviously, I'm not describing the whole of Twitter, but these are kind of the main features that Twitter has. And non-functional requirements would be thinking about the scalability of the app. For example, we might want a non-functional requirements to say that the app needs to handle 1 million of active users at the same time. Or for example, we might think about the performance of the app, which can be setting a limit of the latency when it comes to interacting with the tweets. Now, because nowadays we have so many different ways to architect the solution, the non-functional requirements is what sets the boundaries of our solution. For example, working on an enterprise software, one of the first things that people will do whenever they want to implement a new feature is people will come together and think about how they're going to fit in the new feature into the current architecture. And together they will architect the solution to make sure that the new feature can be added to the system. And these can be then turned into acceptance criteria for the feature, which basically means before we consider the feature to be done, these requirements need to be satisfied or the acceptance criteria needs to be met. For example, if we want our application to be able to handle millions of reads and writes a day, we might choose document databases over relational databases. Or if our application is global and we want to make sure that the latency is less than a second, we might want to distribute our app globally with multi-regional architecture using AWS. And I think it's very important to mention that as developers become more senior, they care more about the non-functional requirements. And these are the things that we need to think about to implement great solutions. The functional requirements, even though we might need to refine them and polish them and make sure they're very clear and we understand what needs to be implemented, they can be implemented with AI nowadays. But if non-functional requirements are not being met, then we can end up with a sticky situation down the line. And if we look at Wikipedia's page for non-functional requirements, there can be so many different types of non-functional requirements. And they're often described as entities because a lot of these types of non-functional requirements end with ET, for example, scalability or performance ability or testability. I mean, you get the point. And the way people write up these non-functional requirements can vary depending on the team or the company. We can go from simple notes in the architecture diagram to very detailed documents describing what the non-functional requirements are. But now let's go through the example of making a Twitter clone and lay out all the functional and non-functional requirements together. Like I said, I'm going to keep this simple, and we can describe the functional requirements as all the features we want our app to have. For starters, we can start with creating an account. We want our users to be able to tweet, to like a tweet, or to comment on a tweet. Now, again, I'm keeping this very simple for the example. Now, for the non-functional requirements, like I said, there's multiple ways to think about this, but we can start thinking about this as a mind map almost. So if we have the app in the middle, then we can have all the different types of non-functional requirements we want to think about. For this example, I'm gonna go through some of these types of non-functional requirements. There's loads more. I'm not really gonna go into all of them. I'm just doing this to show an example. So scalability is usually a pretty big one, and oftentimes people think about it, even if it's a small project. Whenever you get more users, This is the first thing that you need to be thinking about. Here we can now define our non-functional requirement. And these requirements are also negotiable. The business or whoever might be coming up with these requirements, they might say we want to support up to 10 million concurrent users without degradation in performance. But you might say, okay, can we start with 5 million or can we start with 1 million and then go up? Here are a couple that I've thought about for scalability. The system should support up to 10 million concurrent users without degradation in performance. The database should be capable of handling up to 100 million tweets per day with provisions for easy horizontal scaling as the user base grows. And like I said, these are the requirements that are gonna guide how we're gonna implement this solution. I'm just gonna write all the other ones and then we can go through them together. I've changed the graph a bit so it makes more sense. So we have the application, and from there we have the different types of non-functional requirements. These are these 6 boxes. So scalability, performance, availability, reliability, maintainability, and compliance. And then from each of these, we have different things we need to think about. For example, we have user scalability, and then we have an actual requirement here at the end. The system should support up to 10 million concurrent users without degradation in performance. For data scalability, we want the database to be capable of handling 100 million tweets per day with provisions for easy horizontal scaling as the user base grows. So then for performance, we have 3 different types of requirements. You have the response time, which is the system should respond to user interactions within 1 second. The homepage feed should load within 2 seconds, even under peak traffic conditions. This is about the load time. And then with latency, we say maximum latency for data retrieval and updates should not exceed 100 millions in 90% of the cases. And I'm not really gonna go to the rest of these, but I will leave the screen here. We can pause and read them all. But now we can see that these are the requirements that we can put in our features or in our system, and we can uphold the system to these requirements. We need to make sure that our system meets these requirements every time we add something or we change something. And this is how enterprise software is built anyways. I know with Elon Musk bought Twitter, this is not how things were going in there. They would just deploy stuff to production and break stuff. But anyways, in big tech and enterprise applications, this is how things are being done to make sure that the app meets all the functional and non-functional requirements. Make sure you have an actual good application out there in the world. And some of these requirements can actually be compliance or stuff that's not actually coming from the business. Compliance might come from other regulations and rules that the app is operating in. For all users in Europe, GDPR will apply, and that means that the system should be able to allow users to request deletion of their data at any time. And so this is a non-functional requirement that our application needs to meet. And the other example I have here is user data should be retained up to 5 years unless deleted upon user request. I think this is a rule in some countries. The time varies, somewhere it's 7 years, somewhere it's 5 years. But again, this might not be something coming from the business itself. It can come from the regulation and rules that the app is operating in. I hope this makes sense. I hope you understand now what non-functional requirements, why are they important, how they're going to help you progress in your career. That's pretty much it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. If you're not subscribed, make sure you subscribe, like, do all the things for the algorithm. Appreciate it very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. Happy coding. Bye.